Today, Ryan and I are going to give you a preview of a game called Theocratia or Theocratia, depends on how you pronounce it. This is from Mojito Studios and from designer Daniele Tassini and Daniel
Marinangeli. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
A lot of pronunciation going on today, but hopefully we got...
Danielle and Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel and Daniel. This is a tea game. It's technically a tea game.
Yeah, there's been some debate about this. It's his next game. It's a tea.
It
starts with a T. I mean, traditionally those games were published by Board and Dice. This is a different publisher, but it has that same Tassini feel.
For sure.
Even though this is with the co-designer, like this definitely feels that weight. It is on the heavier side of games, but the theme is pretty interesting. I don't think I've seen this kind of theme. We are literally ancient aliens.
Yes.
We as the players are these aliens that have come to this planet. When we have arrived there, we have been worshipped as gods. We're bored. We've decided, hey, let's spend some time nudging these civilizations in particular directions, controlling their actions on a shared board, and trying to get them to worship us as gods. That's the premise of the game.
Yeah, in terms of the heaviness, the mechanics of it, what you're doing on your turn is not particularly heavy. The game is a dice drafting game. You're going to be drafting dice to do a number of different actions. The heaviness comes from a lot of those different actions, but more specifically, it comes from how this game kind of flips the script on things. You're going to see the board out here, and it should be said this is a prototype. There's a lot of different colored pieces. Now, in a lot of games, you'd think those are the player colors.
Purple, the pink, magenta, blue.
Those are not the player. Those are the civilizations. The players are represented by the tracks. So you can see, in a lot of games, the tracks are what represent the things that you're interacting with in the game world, and your pieces are yours. In this, these tracks represent the players. You're going to be trying to climb the different civilization representatives up your tracks, the priests, as well as these spaces out on your board are representative of you. So you can see Ryan is this track here.
The lava track.
Also these lava spaces. So you're going to be putting buildings and structures and workers of different colors from the different civilizations on your spaces. So it takes some getting used to kind of like coordinate your thoughts.
For sure.
Way.
Like you're never going to have a supply of pieces in front of you. There's no player board. All you're going to have is a hand of these power cards, which are very powerful. And maybe some of these conversion tiles, think like Terra Mystica.
Yeah.
You can change some of the terrain types out there because this is my terrain. I am the alien or god of lava. And all these spaces, like David said, the pieces never come in front of you, but if they're on the board and they're on a lava space, it becomes my building.
It helps him.
When I'm looking at here, and there's these different types of buildings, you're going to see like these giant fortresses, these smaller barracks, these factories, and these houses, which are the main pieces that you're going to be putting out on the board. If it ever goes to my tile, it becomes my building. It's a little difficult to think about because when you're looking at it, again, you have to train your brain, like David said, because when I look at this board, I think, okay, well, here's all pink, here's all purple, but I'm not looking at purple. I'm looking at red. I'm looking at the red spaces. David's looking at the brown rock spaces. These are David's buildings. These are my buildings. Takes a minute, but once you get used to that, it's an interesting level of play that's happening.
Yeah, because it does interact, of course, with those civilization pieces because when the factories all say produce, they're going to produce, and the ones in your spaces are the ones that's going to benefit you. So when they produce, they're going to produce a crystal of your type that kind of like goes to serve that civilization, which is going to be tied to how you progress in the game.
So normally these civilizations that we've put along the outside edge of the board would be below the board in a particular order. We've done this to kind of save some space so you could actually see the civilizations, but there's two parts to them that are really important. One is the chronicle, which is almost like a journal that you're going to progress through. Certain actions that you're going to do in the game are going to fill these journal pages with cubes, and they're going to allow you to skip ahead to other pages that are going to make that civilization worth more points. So as you progress through these journals, you're increasing the point value of each given priest, but the priest also needs to be at a certain point on your track. So if I can get my priest high enough that it's like a ×5, I'm on page 3, I would get 15 points for this civilization. So you want to try to kind of maybe focus on a couple civilizations But there's a little twist here.
There is.
The civilization that you have increased with the most doesn't score. It's your 3 lowest. So you can't just ignore any one civilization. You need to kind of try to get devotion from all 4 as you're going through the game. Ideally, you might get a couple that are up here. So when you remove your highest, you still have a few that are scoring at like ×4 or ×5.
Yeah, it is interesting. A lot of games do that. This is going to be one where, I mean, you could potentially get 2 up very, very high and score a lot from one of them, none from the other, and then very low scoring for the other ones that you didn't climb up.
Yeah, now the other thing that matters are these development cards that go below these civilizations. These cards are going to give that civilization a certain action that happens during the development phase. It's either going to expand that civilization out on the board, it's going to kind of represent their natural growth, or they're going to have a holiday where they worship you, in which case all of the crystals that that civilization has collected, a lot of them are going to go onto these civilization chronicles, and that's how you're going to kind of fill up these pages. But these are actually going to rotate. There's almost like a treadmill that's happening. You'll line up the civilizations at the bottom, and these cards will keep shifting every round. They're going to move, so you can kind of see the order in which these civilizations are going to use the development cards.
Yeah, in fact, one of those cards actually does nothing, but you'll know at the beginning of that round what they're all going to do at the end. Yeah. What's interesting about that is it gives you the sense that the civilizations themselves continue to develop, even without the player interaction. But what you're doing on your turns is also trying to nudge them, like Ryan said, and develop them as well. But it's interesting because you can take into account what's going to happen as it relates to how it's going to impact scoring. Because you might look at a card and go, okay, well, actually, you know what? So I don't have to do that. I can do something else because that's going to naturally happen and get things into a state that you want them on the board.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're trying to do, a lot of that is to get those crystals, these little cubes out here, they're called crystals. You're wanting to get those crystals off of the board and into the little storage area of that particular civilization. The reason this matters is because when these cubes come onto that chronicle, you will get some devotion with those priests. If I was doing this, I would get 2 on there, and I would get to move that priest up 2 spaces on that track. So a lot of the actions that you're doing are to move those cubes over, and then eventually hoping that either a player triggers a holiday or the holiday development happens, in which case you're actually going to start scoring all those cubes. So that's a little bit of player control and when these holidays happen and when these are scored, because on your turn, when you draft the die, you're either going to use the die to kind of progress that civilization in a certain area, or you're going to declare a holiday for that civilization.
Yeah, and that brings us to that core mechanism we were talking about of the dice drafting. On your turn, you're going to take one of these dice that you've placed out here, and you're going to choose it. You're going to take the corresponding action, but you're also going to place the die over here, which is going to give you a bonus. This is also interestingly tied to the drafting, because if someone wants to take now another blue die, you can't take a die of the same value that's right before it. So if there was another blue 3, I wouldn't be able to do that. So you have to look for that. Now, there are some ways to mitigate that and change things and allows you to sort of break that rule. But generally speaking, it injects quite a bit of strategy in terms of like choosing this and making it difficult for other players. But like I said, once you do that, you're going to then take the corresponding action from when you took it. And these actions do a wide range of the things that we were alluding to in terms of interacting with this board. One of the things you can do here is to simply take the first player marker. This number 1 allows you to take the first player marker for the next round, but it's kind of an interesting layered approach.
Yeah, it is, because it's not like some games when that first player marker is gone, it's gone. In this one, every player that goes there takes the first player marker from the person that has it. So really, if there's 3 ones, then the third person to take that action is the one that will ultimately end up with that first player marker. But there's also this end of round advancement card. It's going to grow a particular civilization, and we've determined randomly that this round it's going to be blue. Whoever takes that card gets to determine how that advancement is going to happen at the end of the round. So if it's very important to me that I control how blue is going to advance, because maybe that works into my overall strategy, I'm going to want to go there, take that die, take the action, take the first player marker, and then take that card. If you don't take that card or somebody else has taken that card, you get a power card instead. And this is one solid way to get these power cards. They let you break the rules of the game. For one, they can be discarded. Like David mentioned, you can't take another 3, but I could discard it. I could use the same die in a row, or I could discard it to change the color. So if I really wanted to, I could discard both these to take this pink, turn it into a blue, and then take the same action twice in a row with that civilization. There's a wide variety of reasons that you might want to do this, that you might want to change the color. You can also change the number of the die by spending what's called Cosmo points. This is just like a generic tracker that's going to go up and down that determines your cosmic power.
Yeah.
Getting these cards and going up on that Cosmo track are very important because they will allow you to mitigate these dice. Also, these power cards do have some crazy powers that can be just used like action cards, basically.
Yeah, the cards themselves, and we haven't gotten to all of this, but this one says build a pyramid on a house or using only 2 buildings.
Oh, that's
like
huge.
typically it takes quite a bit more, but this way you can do it. But back to a lot of these actions, and we're not going to go into a full how to play on this because it is a very thorough and detailed system that they've got here.
And I should say there's processes. A lot of these processes are actually printed right on the board.
Yeah.
And then right around the outside edges, they show you a lot of step-by-step of how to do those actions. And this is definitely a game I want to say it's heavy, but the way that they've broken down the step-by-step makes it way more digestible.
For sure.
Because when you go to take an action, you just need to look at the spot or look at the rule book and say, okay, we've done step 1, and you just make sure you do every step every time. Then you're going to understand how to do the action.
Yeah, the next space is combat. This is going to allow you to target any space out here on the board, but depending on what color you take, like I said, if I chose purple right now, these cubes over here are the warriors that they have available for the combat. Now, you're only going to be able to do 1 combat, so you're targeting 1 space, but you can see up here, that tells you how many warriors you're going to need for the various types of spaces. You can take out some of these monsters. There's different monsters in different types of spaces, but you can also attack some of the houses and other structures on the board if you're wanting to get a little bit more interactive.
Yeah, you can definitely, if you see somebody is getting a lot of, devotion from one particular civilization and that civilization is really expanding, you can knock them down a peg or two by destroying some of their buildings. Now, there's some compensation involved for everybody that's involved in that fight, but you can also attack buildings to steal them. There's these conversion tiles I talked about, that the Terra Mystica style system. There's 2 ways you can use these. When attacking and when expanding, you can change the terrain. So if I really wanted to take control of this building from David, I could attack it. Instead of destroying it, I put my conversion tile down there and boom, now I control that building. And there's some reasons you want to control buildings. You'll get some extra devotion for the buildings you've got out when people build or expand next to your buildings. You might get some more devotion. So there's definitely a lot of deep strategic reasons that you might choose to do that other than just doing it randomly. You only get 4 of these in the entire game, and you have to unlock your other 3. So it's not something you're going to want to do every time, but it can make a huge difference when you do it at the right moment.
Yeah, and as Ryan just alluded to, that's associated also with expand, which is the next action. You're going to look at one of the civilizations out here next to one of your spaces. In one of your spaces, you can then expand by taking your cube off and putting it in their supply, and then placing a house there. This is the first step towards the next couple actions, which are going to allow you to convert those houses into factories or into barracks.
Yeah, this is one way that you're going to get your cubes from on the board over to their supply. And again, you kind of want to spread them out. You want to get cubes in all these places like I talked about because you're going to want to move up all the priests. But like David said, the other 2 buildings that you build, 3 technically, come from houses. You can convert a house to a factory, which is going to, again, produce crystals for you. When you build a factory, it's interesting. Whenever you do it, all the factories of that color are then going to produce, and all of your factories everywhere are going to produce.
Yeah.
So if you've gone heavy on factories, you've got a lot of factories on the board, you can add these crystals out to all the different civilizations at once. Similar with barracks, except that's how you're going to add soldiers or warriors to that civilization. So if you're thinking ahead that you're going to want to attack a lot with a certain civilization, you might want to build some barracks first to load them up on warriors, because the different things you're attacking require different spends. And the more you've got, the more you're going to be able to do. And then whenever you attack with these warriors, we didn't mention that, but if I attack with purple, the warriors that are used in the fight go to the chronicle. That is another way to speed that chronicle along. So you're starting to already see that you really want to take actions on behalf of very specific civilizations at very specific times, because it's really going to help push that chronicle to the next page.
Yeah, it is really interesting how everything's interconnected, and it's going to take probably a couple plays at least for a seasoned gamer to really try to see how everything is connected. But those are the actions. 4 and 5 are going to allow you to build those things. And then both of them will allow you to build a pyramid as well.
Yeah, this is what you're building to. This is why the positioning on the board matters, because when you want to build a pyramid, you either need to spend a factory or a barrack. So you already have to have upgraded to that next step, and there has to be 3 buildings in a row. So for example, I could build a pyramid, the ultimate symbol of devotion for the purple civilization, by coming here. I have a barracks and there's 3 buildings. It doesn't have to be my building. There just has to be 3 buildings. I can remove them, drop the pyramid, and then I'm going to get devotion multiple times throughout the game. Whenever there's a holiday, you get devotion. Yep. At the end of the game, you get devotion when you have a pyramid. So building up to that pyramid is important. Now, it's worth noting that anything that you build and destroy all comes back to the board. So like, you can never completely demolish a civilization. It can always rebuild. But these pyramids can never be attacked. They can never be destroyed. Once it's built, it's mine. There are only 2 per civilization, so there's a little bit of a race for those, but they're incredibly powerful.
Yeah, the competitive nature of what's going on here is really interesting, because unlike a lot of games where it's like, oh, this is me and this is my civilization, we're all kind of sharing all of this. So you could look at other players and say, okay, well, they're really going a purple route. I can do that too a little bit. Now, what you want to do is to get purple up really high, move that chronicle along with that other person, and hopefully not have purple be your highest priest.
Right, that's the hard part.
But your second highest priest on that track at the end of the game to really make the most of that multiplier. The last action is simply the 6, which allows you to take any of the other actions, but this introduces this concept of malice. On your track at the bottom here, there are these negative points. Everyone starts at 0. That's great. But as you take malice, you're going to move this along and potentially get negative points at the end of the game. So taking a 6 can be very flexible, but it has that downside.
Yeah, but you can avoid that. So there's a way that you can avoid, even if you take a 6. And I talked about this a little bit. I referenced this, the idea of taking a holiday. Any player can choose to have a holiday for that civilization instead of taking the action. You still take the die, you still move it over there, and then you do a holiday for that particular civilization. Every player is going to benefit for the cubes that they have gotten off the board into that civilization. So when I say that you want to spread them out, this is why. Because a player is going to look at the size of the civilization. So for example, pink has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings in it. They're going to move 5 cubes from this supply onto the civilization. Now, ideally, you want to move just your cubes or the neutral green cubes. That's great. Nothing bad happens when you move those. But you might be forced to use these black cubes that come out. It's pollution that is affecting these as they grow. If you have to use a black cube, you take a malice. And if you have to use another player's cube, they get a devotion. So if I'm doing it again for pink, I only have 2 cubes and I need to put out 5. So I'm going to have to use other players. Now, this could actually allow you to knock out multiple pages of that chronicles once, because they continue to add until they're done. The bigger the civilization is, the more of those cubes you're going to add. But if you run out of cubes, you can't do the holiday. So you're kind of watching as people add their cubes to these piles, knowing once you've got enough cubes over there, you can forego your action to do the holiday instead. That's how you're going to really move up these devotion tracks.
Yeah, and players are going to do this, drafting die, taking these actions until the round ends. And when the round ends, that's where we come to those cards that are underneath each civilization. We're going to start at the left, if they're all in one row, and go down that row doing each card. And then those things are going to cycle. So the next round, they're all going to be shifted. So a different civilization is going to have the holiday. 2 others are going to expand, and 1 is going to do nothing.
Yeah, you'll do that. So, and those expansions are kind of done by an AI. It kind of like the book walks you through the processes of like, okay, what says first, look at a green space near the fortress if you can. If you can't, look at a desert space. Then you put a house out, and then that house is going to upgrade to either a factory or a barracks, whichever one they're missing. So if they have 3 barracks out and only 2 factories, you'll add the 3rd factory so that they're balanced, whatever. That's how they're going to kind of expand on their own. Then there's also, if a player took the first player marker and chose to take that expansion, they get to carry out an expansion, but they kind of control the decision of where that expands because they took that card. So there's a little bit of a benefit for taking that action. Now, if nobody chooses to take the card, then that civilization just doesn't expand. Now, it might still from, the card that's in front of it, but if you time it right, you could get 2 expansions from the same civilization at the end of the round.
Yeah, and if all of that wasn't enough, one thing that we may have mentioned but not too thoroughly is the game is going to take over 5 rounds. And each round, there's going to be a card that kind of gives you a little bonus for doing particular actions. So as you're taking your actions over here, you can see these cards over here are attached to those same sorts of things. So, oh, I have an incentive in round 2 to take this certain action because I'm going to get 1 extra worship on my track.
Yeah, that's going to change every round. These are set at the beginning, so you can kind of see where all 5 rounds are going to go. It can hurt you a little bit. Like having the pyramid one in round 2 means you're going to rush to try to get that pyramid. Yeah. Whereas if the pyramid bonus was on round 5, you might be able to set it up so that you're doing multiple pyramids in that round. And again, that's how you're going to move up these devotion tracks. You're going to do that 5 times. We're going to, cycle these through, take all of our actions, do all the expansions in the holidays. And then at the end of the game, that's when you're going to score all your points. You're not really scoring anything during the game, but everything is kind of setting you up for end-game scoring.
And there's not a ton of end-game scoring either. And it's all associated with these tracks right here in a number of different ways.
Yeah, that Cosmo marker that we talked about, that Cosmo marker is going to get you some points, but it's only whatever this multiplier is times 1. So if you manage to get your Cosmo trackers all the way to the top,
6 points.
You start with 6 points. That's not going to be the majority of your points. Then you're going to look at those priests that were out here. And like I said, you're going to get rid of the one that's the highest. So if we had a situation like this, I would lose this, David would lose this, and then our guys are kind of equal.
Yeah.
Then we'd score each one based on how far we got in the Chronicle. And there's a little cheat sheet if you don't want to do the math.
Very nice.
I'm at ×2, and this has the Chronicles 2, so I get 4 points. Now, that's easy math, but like when you get on to the end, when it's like 7 points for the Chronicle, that can be quite a bit. If you can get all the way to the 6, that's 42 points. But again, the only way that you're scoring ×6 is if you manage to get 2 people up there, one of them goes away, then you can score the other one at ×6. I don't know how often that's going to happen.
Yeah, and then the last thing is that malice. So after you score your positive points, you're going to look at your negative points, take those away, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah, that's all the scoring.
Like we said, there is a lot of thinkiness to this game, and it's thinkiness in a way that I don't think I've experienced in a lot of games in terms of like really trying to reset what you're looking at here. Even while we played, there were times where I was like, oh, that's right. I have to look at the spaces are mine.
Not the colored pieces.
Not the colored pieces.
Yeah, it's very easy to think, like if I take an action on behalf of magenta, I'm taking the action on behalf of magenta, but I really just want to take the action on my space for magenta.
Yeah.
Like it's very easy to say, well, magenta needs a factory, but then you realize, oh, I'm not in a position where I have a space, where those conversion tiles might come into handy, But yeah, it does cause you to think about the game in a completely different way. Like that collaborativeness of it, of like, I want to help this civilization grow because it helps me, but David's already at ×6, so maybe I don't want to help this civilization grow.
If Ryan's going to score magenta really well, it makes it very uncomfortable to take magenta actions that sort of benefit that civilization. But anyway, it's a really interesting, thinky thing. If you have any questions at all about it, I know this wasn't a thorough teach, but hopefully you have a good idea of what the game is all about. But let us know in the comments below if you have any questions. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.